angels, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will discuss the leftover part of the chapter All Summer in a Day. So let's get started. We'll begin with page 112, the last paragraph. It was the color of flaming bronze. So sun, the color of the sun is compared to flaming bronze, metaphor, and it was very large. It was very huge in size. And the sky around it was a blazing blue tile color. So the sky around the sun was very bright blue, very intensely colored blue. And the jungle burned with sunlight as the children released from their spell. So this jungle seemed so much bright because of the sunlight that it seemed as if it is burning because of the light of the sun. Released from their spell, it seemed that the children, there was some, they were somehow possessed, there was some spell cast on them, due to which they were very inactive. But now they were released from that spell and they rushed out yelling into the springtime. Yelling into the springtime, spring is happy time, youthful time, time of bloom. So they moved out. Here spring is hinting at the youthful time, the blooming time, the time when the new birth or rejuvenation takes place. So for the people or the children on planet Venus, this time of sunlight, this time to witness the sun was the same like spring. Now don't go too far. The teacher tells them not to go very far. Call the teacher after them. You have only 2 hours. She wants the children that they only have sunlight for 2 hours. Their movement can only be for 2 hours. You wouldn't want to get caught out. She says that you would not like to be caught out in the rain. But they were running and turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. Now sun compared to a warm iron, it is a simile. So they felt the sun burning their cheeks just like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets and letting the sun burn their arms. So they were just opening their jackets and they were letting the sun tan their body. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? So somebody comments that sunlight is better than, or the sun is better than the sun lamps. Now these sun lamps, they are the devices which produce UV rays and they are used as therapeutic devices to get artificial suntan. So somebody comments that natural sunlight is way better than that technology which was used for suntan. Much better. Somebody affirms that it is much better. They stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus, that grew and never stopped growing. So they stopped there running, they stopped running and in the great jungle that covered Venus. So the expanse of the jungle, the wildlife was so much that it seemed that it had never stopped growing. Tumultuously means very violently and very disorderly the plants kept growing. Even as you watched it. Means the growth was so much that it seemed that when you're watching it, it is growing at that time also. It was a nest of octopi. Now the forest is compared to nest of octopi. It is a metaphor used for forest. Octopi is plural of octopus. So it seemed as if it was the nest of octopus. Many octopus actually. Clustering up means there was cluster, there was bunch of great arms of flesh like weed. Now the branches of the trees are compared to arms of flesh and the weed growth, the green growth on these branches is compared to weed. So they are saying that green growth seemed to be like flesh. Wavering means it was swaying, flowering in this brief season. This growth, these branches of the trees which had grown, when there is a lot of rainfall, you see some green kind of growth all around. So that growth was there on the branches of the trees and these branches are compared to the arms of the octopus. And it seemed that they are also flowering, they are also swaying during this brief time of spring. It was the color of rubber and ash. The forest, the area there was of the color of rubber and ash, means it was greyish. The jungle from the many years without sun. This jungle had been without sun for 7 years. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink, means it was very dark, it was greyish. And it was the color of the moon, means these interweaved tentacles of trees, they were compared to octopi, and then they are saying that the entire vegetation was of the color of moon, that is greyish. Basically hinting at the dead and hazardous vegetation on planet Venus. The children lay out laughing. So they were happy because of the sun, they were laughing, they were lying on the jungle mattresses, means on the ground of the jungle, and heard it sigh and squeak, means they could hear even the soil or even the mud, even the ground was making squeaking shrill cries. So this is auditory imagery. There were other examples also of auditory imagery, like that drum and gush of water, then tatting drum, etc. So all these hint at the auditory imagery in the story. Under them, resilient and alive. Resilient means they were recovering from the damage that had happened over the years, and they had come to life again. They ran among the trees, they slipped and fell. They pushed each other, they played hide and seek and tag. So they were happily enjoying. There was so much movement. They were out of those dingy tunnels. But most of all, now these important details, like they played what? Hide and seek, tag, all these are important from MCQ perspective. But most of all, they squinted, mean they scornfully looked at the sun until the tears ran down their faces. Now tears of happiness, they kept directly looking at the sun until the time that their eyes started watering. They put their hands up to that yellowness, means they stretched their arms to feel that yellowness, that warmth of the sun and the amazing blueness, and they breathed of the fresh. So they were breathing the fresh air, and listened. So they were trying to listen to the silence. Now this is a kind of oxymoron. They were listening to the silence, which suspended them in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. Now there is no sea which has no sound and no motion. You cannot see any sea at a standstill. But they are saying that they were listening to a sea. Now Venus, which was never so calm, I would say, that was now motionless. So they were enjoying that silence. They looked at everything and savored everything. Savored means they tried to taste, smell, see. They wanted to pick up every essence of witnessing the sun. They wanted to enjoy every distinctive quality of the presence of sun. Then wildly like animals, so they are compared to animals, children are compared to animals, escaped from their caves. They ran and ran in shouting circles. They were howling, they were making noises. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. So they kept running for almost an hour and did not stop running. And then in the midst of their running, one of the girls wailed, means she cried out uncontrollably. Now wailed, again auditory imagery. Everyone stopped. Listening to her sound, everyone stopped. The girl standing in the open held out her hand. So she stretched out her hand. Oh, look, she said, trembling. Now she was fearful. They came slowly to look at her opened palm. She had stretched her palm like this, so they came to see what's there in the palm. In the center of it, cupped and huge, was a single raindrop, which hints that the time for sun to appear was now over and it was time for the rain again. She began to cry. Now she began to cry. It hints that how sun was affecting Margot, the same effect now lack of sun is going to have on these children, because she also started crying like Margot. They glanced quietly at the sun. So they were looking at the sun. Oh, they were sad. A few cold drops fell on their noses and their cheeks and their mouths. The sun faded behind a stir of mist. So now sun was behind a layer of mist. A wind blew cold around them. They turned and started to walk back toward the underground house. Again, they were going to the tunnels. Their hands at their sides, their smiles vanishing away, happiness vanishing, just like lack of sun had robbed Margot of her happiness. Similarly, now their happiness was also vanishing. A boom of thunder startles them, and like leaves before a new hurricane. Now, children are compared to leaves before a new hurricane. Boom of thunder, again, auditory imagery, startled them. They were perturbed by it, and like leaves, just like the leaves before a new hurricane, they tumbled upon each other and ran. So, leaves move from side to side. Similarly, these children were moving. Lightning struck 10 miles away, 5 miles away, a mile, half a mile. Means there was striking of the light, means now the weather was again the way it used to be. The sky darkened into midnight in a flash, means within no time the sky became dark again. It was darkness everywhere. Darkness in the nature meant darkness in the life of the children also. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining hard. So they waited there till it started raining hard. Then they closed the door and heard the gigantic sound of the rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. Now the sultry weather of Venus was back again. The rain was falling in large amount. There were avalanches. There was gigantic sound of the rain. So this is visual imagery also. This is auditory imagery also. And this sudden rush of rainfall which they are showing by gigantic sound of the rain and avalanches, this is somehow hyperbole also. There is exaggeration. There is exaggeration of the point that there was so much rain. There were other examples also of hyperbole in this text, like they compared the sun to a coin which was large enough to buy the world with. So there is no coin large enough to buy the world with. That is why we can say that was also an example of hyperbole. Will it be 7 years more? Somebody asked, will it take more 7 years to, just witness such a beautiful scene? Yes, 7. Then one of them gave a little cry. Somebody cried out, Margot. Now, look how sun had affected them. They were again, reminded of Margot. They became compassionate. They were considerate. Sun is seen as a positive force. It is seen as a harbinger of life. What? She's still in the closet where we locked her. Margot. Now they were sad. They stood as if someone had driven them. They stood as if someone had driven them like so many stakes. Now stakes mean that pointed piece of wood which is dug into the ground so that the animals can be tied around it. So these children were also motionless. They were still, they were static, and they looked as if they were the stakes of wood into the floor, like they were dug into the floor. They looked at each other and then looked away. They glanced out at the world that was raining now, and raining steadily. It was raining without any break. They could not meet each other's glances. Their faces were solemn, means they were serious, they were pale, the color of their skin was again gone. They looked at their hands and feet, their faces down. So they were shameful of their behavior. They felt shame on what they had done. So their callous behavior, remember how they used to treat Margot? That callous behavior had become a little compassionate by the single touch of sun. So sun is a positive force. This all is building your theme of sun or nature and its positive effects on human beings. Margot, one of the girls, said, well, no one moved. Nobody moved. Go on, whispered the girl. She directs them to let's just go and get her out of the closet. They walked slowly down the hall in the sound of cold rain. They turned through the doorway to the room in the sound of the storm and thunder. Lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. So it is again showing that how nature was again very harsh, and they were going to take out Margot. They were going to bring her out of the closet. They walked over to the closet door slowly and stood by it. They were standing at the side of it. Earlier, you remember how Margot was alienated, how she was ostracized by these children. They used to alienate her. Now these children are going to bring her. They feel for her now because again, sun being a positive force in their life. Behind the closet door was only silence. She had given up that retaliation. She was not beating against the door. She was calm and silent behind it. She had accepted her fate. They unlocked the door, oh, even more slowly, and let Margot out, and they allowed Margot to come out, and this is how the story ends. uh, you can note down the themes like one, sun seen as a harbinger of life, importance of nature and environment. Then you can write that overwhelming rain had created inhospitable atmosphere. Children were not considerate of Margot. Then you can write that lack of sun can make the children negative, less civil, rude, and they can become bullies. Okay, then sun as a force which which is seen as a harbinger of positivity. Then figures of speech I have discussed. The only one I think I have not discussed is color imagery, like gold. Then there was mention of blue tile color. Then the sun was yellow, also mentioned at some times. So bronze, all these are the examples of color imagery. Then there is also situational irony. Now situational irony is when you expect something to happen, but on the contrary something else happens. Okay, like we were not expecting that Margot will not be able to see that beautiful scene of sun coming out, but to our surprise she was locked in the closet and she was not allowed to see that. So that is situational irony. Now when you prepare for your exams, ensure that for prose section you must keep your answers ready for the character sketch of the main characters. Then the theme should be prepared properly, the figures of speech should be prepared properly. This is for subjective part of your exam. Why? Because if you have the idea of these 5 or 6 aspects of the chapter, you can easily write answer for any question. If you know the story, if you know the themes, if you know the figures of speech, it is very easy to frame any answer. Also from MCQ's perspective, you should know what happened after what was the event that preceded a certain thing, that succeeded a certain thing, what were the exact words used, then the meanings of some particular words, the themes, the figures of speech. They are very important from objective point of view. I hope you have understood the chapter and all your doubts are sorted. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel.